Well, hello, my next level friends. Super happy to connect here with you once again. Drew and I are super ready to have a conversation today about something that's been in the news left and right since pretty much December or so last year, all the way through this year. It's not going away, it's going to continue, and that is Chat GPT AI,
Mhm.
right? Artificial intelligence in its many forms, but specifically in this episode, we're going to talk about Chat GPT, the one where you talk to it and then it responds back to you.
Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
First of all, Drew, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm just great, man. This is going to be a lively chat, as it were. In more ways than one.
Yeah.
Fantastic topic, very timely,
Mm-hmm.
and I look forward to hearing what you say.
Yeah, and me too. It's I think good for our friends to know that prior to this episode, we haven't really talked about uh, kind of our exchange of ideas on chat. Drew knows a little bit more of mine because I started using it quite a bit earlier.
Hmm.
And then, but I don't know his impressions yet because he's been also testing it. And I said, don't tell me anything. Tell me during the episode. So it could be more exciting, right?
This is a spontaneous chat, as it were.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And before we start, I think it would be good idea for everyone who's listening or watching to kind of hear a bit of a description of what is Chat GPT. I'm sure there are friends who have heard it or have look at some headlines but are not quite sure. And I actually know for a fact because I did an exercise. I went to Facebook about a week ago and I make a post and said, I'm doing a blog about ChatGPT. Tell me, a little bit of what do you think of it. And I got,
Mm.
from artists, and I got all kinds of responses, some of them which were way off, had nothing to do with ChatGPT, but things that people just kind of hear in the news or somebody told them. So I think it would be a good idea to just start really with a brief description of what ChatGPT is, which it is an online software. It's an artificial intelligence chatbot developed by OpenAI, and it was officially launched to the public on November 30th, 2022. It is known for enabling users to refine and steer a conversation towards a desired length, format, style, level of detail, and language that is being used. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it is.
Mm.
Software is very simple. When you log in to ChatGPT, all you have is literally just a box where you can put text and you can ask any question to the robot, and then it will answer back in text form as well. There are other AIs that others have seen or heard with images and videos. That's not what we're talking about in this particular episode. We're going to focus specifically on the chat bot, the one where you interact via text. I just want to
Yeah.
make that clarification so that our friends kind of know what we're talking about when we say artificial intelligence for the purpose
Yeah.
of this podcast. I'm sure we're going to do another one where we come back and talk about images and all those things, but on this one, let's talk about text. And I think both of us have tested it, have used it in different ways under different scenarios. I think it would be kind of good idea to kind of share how we have both used it and tested it out. But I would like to start with first impressions, kind of like the first time that you sit down and you said, okay, I heard some things, but I'm gonna test it out. So I'll tell you kind of my quick first impression, and then Drew, maybe you can tell me your first
Absolutely.
impression, and then we'll go from there. So I started using it early in the year because I came out in November 22. And you guys know that I love to jump in anything that's new just because I like to test it out and see what it is.
You're
So,
teaching us.
so I went in totally not knowing what to expect. And the first thing I started, was pretty much asking random questions
Mm.
uh, you know, like facts about different things. And then I was so amazed by how quickly it was giving me a response. So then I started to elevate the type of questions that I was asking. And then really quickly I realized, wow, this is much more uh, smart or intelligent, perhaps the word, that I anticipated. And that was kind of like my first introduction into it. As a first impression, I was blown away, with
Mm.
this thing that I had in front of me. So then after I asked a bunch of random questions and things of that nature, I left it for a couple of days, and I started then doing kind of some research and finding out how the people are using it. Which then I came back and then started thinking about, okay, as an artist, right? Because my first interaction with it was just at the human level, just asking for random things like recipes and stuff like that, to see what it could find. But I started then thinking, okay, as an artist, how could this be useful for me? And that's kind of how I began my journey into it, which we will be sharing more of those details later on. But that was kind of my
Yeah.
first impression. I got hooked. In other words, I got
Yeah,
hooked like in
absolutely.
2 seconds. How about for you, Drew?
Well, I mean, you've summed it up for me as well, in a
Mhm.
way. However, I have to play the devil's advocate here
Of course.
because, I come from, I like to believe I like to write.
Yeah. Hmm.
I feel fairly well. I'm well read
Hmm.
to a degree. I've used writing for a couple of decades.
Hmm.
I've relied on my skills as a writer.
Hmm.
And, there's some things you just don't want to give up.
Yeah.
And when this came along, I thought, well, it's not a fad. I knew it wasn't going to be a fad. This is
Hmm.
something that is going to change our lives and
Hmm.
those lives, ahead of us and behind us.
Right.
So one of the things that I came with a bit of trepidation, and
Hmm.
when it first came on, and you had done a session with it,
Hmm.
and you were so excited about it, and you were keying in sort of information live for us as a group.
Hmm.
Don't recall what it was we were talking about, but you were just going through examples, and I kept
Right.
thinking, I don't know, I can't see how I can use this
Hmm.
at all, and I tried to formulate ways I could feel comfortable with it.
Hmm.
And as I say, coming from that sort of writerly background, and
Yeah.
always having like a mother that was a writer,
Right.
constantly and sort of in my shadow, you know, tapping my head, saying,
Hmm.
cursive writing and spelling. Like
Right.
she just sort of drilled this into me.
Hmm.
So I wasn't going to let anything sort of, uh, you know, come in the way of that, in a way.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was watching you, and you were keying in certain information, and I was like, okay, well, that's all well and good, and I kind of left it after that.
Hmm.
I didn't have that immediate, connection to this application. So when you and I spoke of doing this podcast,
Hmm.
I started doing my research in the way I do research,
Yeah.
and I wasn't going about it in a way that sort of professional writer might. I
Hmm.
was doing it more casual, and I was hooked
Hmm.
like immediately.
Yeah.
I went and downloaded a number of books, uh, current books that are, current writings,
Hmm.
and seeing what this program is all about.
Hmm.
And I started doing tests such as, emails,
Okay.
replying to emails, for example, from friends
Uh-huh.
that are talking specific things, but not so, personal, but just
Hmm.
general emails. It's how I communicate.
Hmm.
And I started writing responses to them based on the prompts I gave based on their emails.
Okay.
And it was incredible. And now all of a sudden I started to realize the potential
Hmm.
was enormous
Right.
of what this system knows. Now, to preface that, as it said, Chat GPT really sort of ended its knowledge base in
Hmm.
2021.
Right.
So it has a lot of knowledge up to 2021.
Right.
So anything that's current,
Hmm.
say something in the news that might have happened 2 weeks ago, that's
Yeah.
in an email to me, as sort of general conversation, and I might refer to it. Chat
Hmm.
GPT probably won't understand it.
Right.
So it's got its own knowledge base and it's got its own sort of life at this point. Now they're
Mhm.
building again, more information as we speak.
Mhm.
But up for Chat GPT, it really ended in 2021 as far
Mhm.
when they released it. So it has information up to that date. And I
Right.
thought, well, that's pretty good,
Mhm.
but it's not current.
Right.
So if you're using, yeah, so my experience is it's a vast
Mhm.
platform
Yeah.
for
Now, one
what
of
we
the
need. Yeah.
recent,
Yeah.
yeah, one of the recent updates on ChatGPT was ChatGPT 4, which is the
For
paid
yeah.
option. So on that one, it does have now the feature where it accesses the web, so it can now pass
Right.
2021. So
Yeah.
it has that ability now to search web,
Yeah.
which I tested out, and I'm gonna give you later, some results of something I did with Chat GPT to see in comparison to another one, also as far as what it knew of recent information and how
Yeah.
accurate it was
Yeah.
from something that relates to us, Drew. So you'll see.
Yeah. But it's also, well, I
Yeah.
think too, the one important thing is, I think one of the things that was initially off-putting for me was that I
Hmm.
didn't know how to prompt it.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what questions to ask
Right.
for it to reply. So when I was going about it, expecting a reply to something I hadn't prompted it to do,
Hmm.
of course, it's not going to give me the answers I
Right.
want, and it's going to be generic, and
Right.
there isn't a lot of specifics in there.
Hmm.
But once you learn to prompt,
Right.
then all of a sudden that information becomes narrowed down and very pointed.
Right.
So I see, the more knowledge we have as
Hmm.
individuals, and we prompt the system,
Hmm.
then wow, it's
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that really surprised me where um even though I'm not a writer in the sense of the level that you are, but I always loved writing, right? And
Mhm.
in the school, like I I had like really good grades on the kind of like the creativity part of my writing, but
Mhm.
really bad grades on the mechanics of writing, right? Because
Right, the
English is my
grammar
second,
and the
yeah, English is my second
syntax, and
language, exactly. So
of
I always
course,
had
yeah,
trouble with that, and has always been kind of like my Achilles tendon, right? When it comes to writing, like I really want to write, but I write it, and then I have to have, somebody else to read it and
right,
proofread it for me, and because there's something that just don't make sense to me, like is it in or is it on, right? On when you said,
yes, of
am
course,
I in
yeah.
the house or am I on?
Well, and
All
you're not alone in this. A good
right,
percentage of our population around the planet are not fluent in any one language,
right.
let alone English.
So
So
exactly. So
yeah,
when I started thinking of ChatGPT, like, well, what if I want to, 'cause like you just the way you said it, it's perfect, right? When you don't know how to prompt it, it just gives you very generic responses. And so,
and
what
you're
if
going to
I
have a generic kind of
ex-
reaction to it.
sound to it?
It's going to be
Exactly,
like, well, you know what, leave it, take it, leave it, whichever.
exactly. It's very general.
Mm,
So, like, what
yeah.
if I go back to writing, which I had really stopped writing for a long time. And I remember I told you, what, I'm gonna start writing again every day, and I'm gonna share it with our community, in our next level group. So I started doing like these daily thoughts. So I'm like, what if I actually write it, the way I'm thinking of it, and then I copy it and I have ChatGPT to proofread it for me instead of having my wife to
Mm,
proofread it or a friend to proofread it. I'm gonna have it to proofread it. So, but I'm gonna test it so that the prompts are correct and I can save my prompts so that it gives me, a correction that it is as true to what I wrote,
mm.
um, just grammatically fixed, right?
And does
Which,
that, as an example,
yeah,
while you're doing that and you're saving your prompts,
exactly.
with while you save those prompts over a period of time, as I understand it,
Mhm.
it starts to understand your language or
Yeah,
your syntax or the way you might
communicate. Yeah,
communicate.
yeah,
It's the way you speak. Sergio speaks. It
yeah,
will start to pick up on your,
yeah. Your nuances,
those little, yeah,
your
right.
subtle. Yeah,
I think it's fantastic.
And
This is a learning system that it's learning
exactly.
you as you're learning it.
Now
It's very good.
this is something that I learned, which is good to also to know, is that it learns about what you're saying in the prompt as long as you use the same feed. If you start a new prompt, it
And then
won't. Yeah, it starts from scratch. It will
that's
not,
right.
because
That's
it
right.
doesn't have a, let's say, a hard drive where it stores information, right? So
Mm,
I have, for example, one prompt that is, I mean, not one prompt, one chat that is super long, because on that one, for example, one of the this is a good strategy for any artist who may want to use
mm,
it.
mm.
I started not by asking the bot, but rather by teaching the bot about
Right.
me.
Of
So
course.
yeah, so I started like,
Because
okay, I'm
it
gonna,
is still is
yeah,
essentially an assistant to you. You are
exactly,
the creator. It's the
exactly.
assistant that is, assisting you in
Hmm.
producing your final copy.
Exactly, yeah, and
It's
that
not
is
writing it.
exactly. It
Yeah.
can write it, but it will not.
Mm,
You will not be happy, right? For the friends who sometimes are just using it for just to spit something out. You
that's
can do
right.
that, but it's
Yeah.
not gonna be your voice. And I think for us as artists and creators, we pride in our creativity, right? We thrive in our
Absolutely.
creativity, and we want to make sure that as we communicate, we are using our creative way in which we do it, um, the closest as possible. But I think what this tool is allows us just to kind of fine tune it. And for me, like what makes the difference is like, well, this tool is allowing me to communicate a little bit better and make sure that the person on the other side understands it better, right? And
Which
that's
begs the
kind of like the
question,
angle. Hmm.
when you look at the final, draft after you've prompted it or you've written the copy,
Hmm.
then you've prompted it to clean it up, to create, something new with it,
Right.
bring something fresh to it.
Hmm.
Um, did you ever feel that you were that it felt that it wasn't your voice, that it took it too far?
Yes, and sometimes, yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes. And so what I often do is I do my final editing at the end too,
right.
where it spits out.
Without using Chat GPT,
Yeah.
like
So for
taking what it's provided and then
and then just
taking it back into a Word program and
no, it's
doing it
simply
yourself.
no. That's what I would just simply replace some phrases with something
I
like, I
see.
would never say that word, for example, right?
Right. Of
Or I would
course.
never say that little phrase myself.
Yeah.
So that's what I would delete, or so I would do the final editing on that end. But for the most part, just like you said, the more I use it, using the same prompts and under the same chat, it's getting better and better at capturing how I write and what
That's
I
right.
want to say. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Now, have you had anybody come back to you and say, in a private email or private text or something, saying, "We notice you're writing, but are you using Chat GPT?"
No.
Like
Mhm.
no one.
No.
So really, it's perfected it in a manner that people aren't noticing.
Well, but again, I'm not. ChatGPT is not writing on my behalf. I'm still
That's
writing.
true.
I'm still writing it myself, right?
Mm,
100%. I write it. This is the idea. Then I use the ChatGPT to make corrections, right? To do
yes. Yeah.
those corrections that I would not pick up, or finding. Sometimes he'll take, let's say, a run-on sentence, breaks it into two sentences, and adds a
Right.
little bit more to make it
Just
cohesive.
pulls
And
the grammar together and
exactly.
you
And
know.
yeah, and that's the nice thing about the program, that you can choose what level of correction you want. You can say,
Yeah.
make it more creative, or you can say give it a more formal tone, or give it a more casual tone, or give it
Yes.
you
That's
know
right.
which is kind of interesting. So for example, I tested it also, like to um I did I did a YouTube video on this. I did my artist statement. Say, okay, I'm going to now refine my artist statement. I haven't refined it
Mm,
in a long time,
right.
so I'm gonna
Mm,
refine it. So I wrote my artist statement, and then I took it to ChatGPT, again for corrections and grammar and so on. And then what I did is, like, okay, once I had a good copy that I was happy with, said, okay, how would you summarize it in just like three sentences?
mm,
So now it's taking what I wrote and what it uh, help me write as an end product, and then having it analyze it and figure out what are the three most important things about the
Yeah.
statement. And it was interesting to see what it chose. What's the essence of what I just said. uh,
And was it correct?
it
Did
was
you feel it was correct?
Well, I think in those things, it's a personal choice. In my case, I was very happy with, I was very happy
Right.
with what it said. And then I went even further. I said, okay, now make it into an elevator pitch, right? Like
Ah, boy.
even summarize it like a 1, 2 sentences, not a whole paragraph. And it was actually very good. I
Wow.
was happy with the result, that it had given me from that. Which,
Wow.
as you know,
Unbelievable.
sometimes, yeah, working on another statement can take weeks sometimes, and
This is
coming up
true.
with the right words. To me, it has become a way of making me love again the writing aspect, which for
Mm.
years I had put in behind because of
The
my
time and the energy
the time,
that
the
it took.
energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more than that, it was the barrier of
Yeah.
entry, because of my um, difficulty with the English language.
Yes.
So
Very true.
all
Yeah.
of a sudden, like that barrier, like disappeared. It's like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I can again write and have an assistant
Yeah.
who can help me make sure I'm communicating correctly.
Do you write them in Spanish? Just a
No,
question. Like
no, I write
you
them in
always
English.
write in English.
I write it, yeah. And it's funny because that's a good question, because after now 30 years in the United States, my Spanish, my vocabulary is good, but my writing in Spanish is not good. It's worse than
Right.
it is in English. So,
Have you tested any of the, speaking or writing something in Spanish and then having it translate into an English? Did you feel? I'm certain you must have, because
I
you're
have
just that
done,
type of person.
yeah, I have done the other way around though.
Have
I
you? Yeah.
And it's funny because there's this thing we call Spanglish, right? Like at home we
Of
speak
course. Yeah.
Spanglish, we speak
Yeah.
half English, half Spanish. So I tested it, and I can speak to Chat GPT in Spanglish, and I can say some things in English and then switch to Spanish, and I said, give me the answer in Spanish, and it will give me the
Ah,
answer because it's multilingual.
right. Yeah. Hey, speaking of that, like, this is a question I honestly don't know the answer to, but so how many languages does it profess to have? Is it
I don't
like,
know, but I know there's a lot. There was a video that I saw where they took it to like one of the some really far away tribe in, I don't even know where, can't remember, tell you the truth, but they were using it, as an educational tool for
wow?
them to translate things that they had never been translated before.
Yeah. Wow.
So it has a lot of, I think, as a technology, it has a lot of potential, has a lot of
I think
good.
even just, in
Hmm.
the, as you're speaking there, I'm thinking now, the old Fodor's, travel
Hmm.
guides that we used to carry around as we traveled. It was
Right.
written generally in whatever language, English or Spanish or whichever,
Hmm.
but it was written by a writer, and
Yeah.
it wasn't, necessarily up to date, which is interesting because now you can go in with, I'm quite certain your iPhone or you know your
Hmm.
Samsung phone, as you have Chat GPT on any of these devices as you travel, you can be able to key in information and
Yeah.
get a whole host of information that's live
Right.
and up to date, right?
Hmm.
And as far as language goes as well,
Yeah.
instead of you might remember those things. How do you say hello in Japanese?
Yes,
And
exactly.
you'd say, how do I say hello in Japanese? And then it would say konnichiwa, and it would tell you how to do it, but it would never elaborate. Right. So now
Exactly.
you've got something that will, now you can ask it a second question.
Hmm. Hmm.
When do
Yeah.
I, you know, how do I do this? Should I do
Right.
this? And now all of
Right.
a sudden you've got a tool that gives you all the answers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another way in which I'm using it quite a bit is, and I think this could be useful for any artist who has a blog. If you have a blog that you write, sometimes the writing part, might not be as difficult as coming up with the right title, right? And particularly a
Yes.
title that might have good search engine optimization, or that people are searching for. And you're always trying to find what's the right title, and sometimes just finding the title can take you forever. So what I use it a lot too when I write a blog post, is I since the chat has the post that I've been working on, I usually say that suggest 10 different titles for this blog post that are also good for SEO, and it will output like 10. And sometimes from there I would pick parts of one and another, and I say, okay, now I'm gonna write this title and give me 10 more similar.
Yeah.
And so you can just keep asking,
which is kind of, you're narrowing it down. This
exactly,
thing just will never end.
right? And as a
As long as you
brainstorming
change
tool,
your
it's good.
brainstorming. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine when we were in the agency business years ago?
Yeah.
When you'd have a creative session, 6 or 8, design directors sitting around and saying, well, what do you about this? And what do you think about that? And what's the demographic? And all of a sudden you could now essentially have your full meeting in a few minutes and come up with your whole plan.
Right.
Based on a few prompts,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I did also a funny test the other day, because as you know, we shared in previous episodes, we're in the process of moving and things like that. So we were repainting the house, and we piled all the furniture in one room in the center of the room, so that the painters could paint the walls. So I was just walking around, and then I look at that pile, like that looks like it could be a work of art in a museum. Right? So if I would take that pile and put it in the Museum of Contemporary Art, probably it will pass as art, right? So
yes,
I said, I'm gonna have some fun. So I went to Chat GPT and I said, write a museum quality statement from contemporary art about a pile of furniture that is all like utilitarian, contemporary, neatly arranged on top of each other, creating a sort of sculptural form.
I can't imagine what it gave you.
It came out with the funniest, well, not funny, I mean, it was a serious thing, commenting on the structures and the role power play. So all kinds of, if you were to read that statement in a museum, you would say, wow, a curator wrote that.
Yeah.
And
so
that's
was it becoming a little bit art speak?
Oh, it was totally art speak. It was totally museum quality, curatorial, what you expect at a contemporary art museum.
Reread every line.
Yeah, I should post it in the comments of these videos so our friends can see it. But I was like blown away. Like, this is insane.
A question I would have back to your writing in your blog.
Yeah.
For example. This is more of a sort of esoteric question, really, is and personal in many regards. But if you're going to be writing a sort of regular blog, say it's a daily thing, like you're doing a daily thing right now with the Art Next Level, and they're really exciting because you're coming up with a new idea, you're coming up a new concept every day. It's easy for you to, you've come with the concept, you've written it, you've prompted Chat GPT to come up with and sort of finalize it for you, and you can post it, and they are very enjoyable.
Thank you.
As a writer, do you feel, could they ever eventually sort of bore you to tears? Because there is a sense of when the writing that I've seen, not of yours, just generally speaking, seems a little bit less personal. You know what I'm trying to get at?
Absolutely.
When you just feel like you're not, that your piece of writing maybe is just kind of on the surface. It never goes quite deep enough.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Not yet. And this is what I'm doing to make sure that doesn't happen to me. Because I had that question like, I don't want people to think that all of a sudden I'm coming out with a lot of blog posts because I'm just telling ChatGPT to write for me,
That's right. Yeah.
right?
No, you're
So
not
that
though.
no, exactly, that's not the case. So there's only one way that you can stand out in a way, right, from the machine, and that is the personality, right?
Hmm.
So when I write, I'm telling a story that relates to me, right? So
Hmm.
I'm purposely now when I'm right, I didn't do that for the first few ones, but then after like okay, I have to talk about something that is personal to me, either through a little story or through a little memory or through a little
Hmm.
moment, or so maybe something I saw in my studio or something I remember, so that it is really that personal to me
Hmm.
that a machine could not just come up with, because the machine is not me.
Yeah. True.
And that's
Yeah.
that's where, and I think that's where, for what, that brings the question, right? Will the machines replace us? Will
No,
replace,
absolutely not.
and I
Not at
think
this
that,
point.
yeah, and I think that's where we, as creatives, that's irreplaceable, right? Our
Sure.
history, our memory, our trajectory, our experiences, that's the always the salt that makes whatever we do, whether visual or in music or in writing, unique, right?
Yeah.
It's that ingredient. And I think if we lose it
Yeah.
because we just want to make things fast, we will fall into that category where that just looks like a cookie cutter,
Yeah, and it's going to
conversation.
bore the heck out of you
Exactly.
over the
Exactly.
years, right?
Hmm.
Or days, really.
Right.
Another interesting aspect that I found was that I'm going to refer back to this email that I had.
Yeah.
So I had taken this friend's email, and he's a very good writer. He's a very good personal writer. He doesn't use Chat GPT. He's an older guy,
Hmm.
and he writes to me almost every day. We have
Hmm.
this sort of pen pal kind of thing going.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And like you and I mean, we're communicating all the time with ideas and just sort
Hmm.
of general reflection.
Right.
And so he writes this, and he refers to something regarding the current war in Ukraine, right?
Hmm.
And so I had Chat GPT respond to a
Hmm.
number of prompts from
Hmm.
me to reply back to him,
Mm.
to his email.
Okay.
And the one thing that I noticed through the thing was that while he got very sort of emotionally engaged in the conversation about the Ukraine war, for example,
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
had an opinion. He had a very strong opinion.
Hmm.
He has a very sort of, you can feel the emotion in his
Hmm.
opinion. And when
Hmm.
I replied back through Chat GPT, what it did was it took that very sensitive aspect of that email, the
Hmm.
Ukraine war,
Hmm.
and it turned it around in favor of the opposing party because it just felt that this was a better story.
Very narrative. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a better narrative, right? And so
Hmm.
what happened was it failed. Of course, it's going to fail. It doesn't have emotions,
Hmm.
right? It's going to fail that writer in understanding the nuance
Hmm.
or the emotional value of that piece of
Right.
writing. Right?
Hmm.
And that's the one thing uh, and hence why I asked you about, do you feel you'll ever get bored of,
Hmm.
you know, producing blogs? Is there an element of that it just stays the same, at the same level? It never goes deep, right?
Hmm. I think
Because it's the inability, it has no ability to go deep, really.
right. But again,
I,
that's only if you're having it to do the response or having it to do the writing. If you as a writer you go deep, and all the machine is doing is making sure it is well written, it is uh, correct
but that's an
punctuation.
interesting
That
question,
you
though, or
know.
his answer, because in his regard, I took what his email
Hmm.
and I just copied it, and I said, reply to this email, reply in kind to this email, or reply whatever. I don't remember what I prompted it. And it took the narrative as it chose.
Twisted it, yeah.
Yeah, I twisted the narrative from, it changed the whole story essentially.
Right.
Or the feel of it, because, I hadn't prompted it to say, to stay with that similar narrative. So it opted for a much more pleasing outcome.
More neutral, perhaps, or
neutral. Yeah. It was a neutral outcome.
It would be it would be interesting to go back and correct it and see what it does. Say no. Be more empathetic to.
I'm considering doing that
as a test. Yeah.
But I think it also, from its knowledge base, it's a highly knowledgeable system. I mean, it's got data behind it, right?
Right.
That blows my mind. That I think one of the prompts that I had originally, as I was sort of tentatively beginning to use Chat GPT, I couldn't think of questions to ask it. So I said, tell me about the story about how Sergio Gomez in Chicago and Drew Harris met. I think it was one of the first ones that I did, because it was something, how am I going to make this relevant?
And what did it say?
This is what blew my mind, was that it not only recognized who you were already, and it recognized where I am and where you are, but it recognized some of our past successes, our exhibitions, our curatorial stuff. And really, I hadn't prompted it to give me anything of that.
Wow.
And it started recognizing the Joby Art Center, because we're associated with these things. So on the web, or that information is out there, right?
Right. And
so, it was a bit, I had to sit back and think, wow, how did it know that?
Right. And good. This is the perfect spot where I want to share something, because I did something similar, in which I asked ChatGPT 4 again to the question was, tell me who is Drew Harris, the artist, right? So it gave me a pretty good, response to, pretty accurate to who you are and, your past, coming from the design background. And now
tell me, where is he getting this information?
The web. I'm sure that from things perhaps that interviews that we have done, because of your show, we wrote a lot of things about, your show in Chicago about you. But it was, ChatGPT was limited as far as, not a whole lot of detail. So then I said, okay, I'm going to try the Google BARD, BARD, which is the Google AI, which is also brand new. I'm thinking because that one is from Google, so it has more access to all things Google. So I asked the same question to tell me more about who Drew Harris is. So the difference that BARD did for me, which you'll find interesting. So it gave me, again, information about you, your biographical info that's out there. However, I'm going to give you some of the things that it said. It says, some of Harris' most well-known paintings include, and actually listed 3 most well-known paintings. Let's test it. So one is the Magnetic North paintings from 2022.
Yes. Okay.
All for the Muse of Fire from 2001.
Wow.
And the last one, Collage of Interconnected Theme from 2017.
Wow.
Do you remember those pieces?
Yeah, I do.
But so, according to it,
the titles are not correct, but I know what they're talking about.
Yeah. And then he gave me some links. At least the AI from Google gave me 3 links, one from Artsy, one from your website, Drew Harris, and one from another website for more information. And then I followed up with another prompt. Said, okay, tell me, what did I ask it? It's right here. What is his latest exhibition? Just to see if he could find, or it could find, the latest. So, and here's something I want to read to you, because here's where it made a mistake.
Do I want to hear this?
No, it's all good, but
Okay.
it so just so that to show that these tools are not 100% accurate, and that when it comes to information and research, we cannot take them for
Mm.
as sure.
As, yeah,
Is
right.
For example, it said after they talk about the show here in Chicago, the Magnetic North paintings, it was held at 30 Contemporary in Chicago. That of those fine, the exhibition featured a series of paintings, blah blah blah. So that's good. But then the next sentence, I'm like, what? So the exhibition was curated by Martin Seed, who is the director of 33 Contemporary Gallery. Sid
Mm.
said that he was drawn to Harry's work because of his raw energy and emotional power. And he said that the paintings, and he using quotes, capture the essence of what it means to be alive. So, for our friends who do not know, I'm the director of the 33 Contemporary Gallery. Not
So who is this other
Sid.
guy?
So, just to show, it's showing it as a fact when clearly it's not
But
a
it's,
fact.
yeah, you see, and now again, this is the issue that we're playing with. This is a whole other episode we can talk about.
Exactly.
Ethics and authenticity, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because
that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, and it's a really strong.
Let's talk about this. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Because I think one of the things that I'm really intrigued by, but also very scared by, is the fact that almost all the reading I've done online, the podcasts that we've listened to together, you've recommended, I've gone ahead and listened to it. The books that I've downloaded for my Kindle, just so I could get some basic reading in my hand. They all refer to this. They also have to seem to have this one common exercise that everybody does, and that is write me 10 chapters or chapter ideas for a book on such and such. And those 10 pages come up with whatever theme you're going to be using, right? And I did a test this morning based on that email that I received yesterday from this guy, right?
Yeah.
So I've been playing with this email and thinking about things that he might relate to.
Okay.
So I would have Chat GPT create something, and I would send it back to him. Say, look what I found based on this prompt. And all I said was, give me 10 chapters on the Newfoundland schooner and its effects on rural life in Newfoundland, right? Because this guy is a big, he's a seafaring, captain guy,
Wow.
and unbelievable the amount of information. But when I sent it to him, he replied by saying, none of it's true though. None of it is relatable. He said, I know it better than most people. And he said, these kinds of things, the dates are wrong. The facts are wrong. So this is an interesting point because if you're going to use this amazing technology, which it is, I'm not trying to undermine it, but the fact is that we have to be very careful. We can't take it for what it says for its word, as you said, right? And that is going to be one of our issues, because I think, providing you get the information and you publish it, and then you find out later that someone is, taking you to task on that information that you have made public based on an AI generated response.
Exactly.
So does it make less work or more work for us? Because if we have to fact check everything that it's telling us,
right? Yeah. No,
are we defeating the purpose?
Exactly. And I think it's good that we touch on this, because again, we can say, well, this is a great tool. We can start using it for all sort of research and things like that. But curiosity, I think, is good. However, you always have to think about, what am I using this for, right? If I was going to write a press release about Drew's exhibition, I would not use that, because I would probably get it wrong, right? I would have to ask Drew about it or do my own research.
Yeah, but if you have no access to it,
exactly.
this is
And
see,
that's for
this is
people
the
to be
thing that
careful
I'm.
of.
Yeah, and I think this is going to play big time in things like news reporting,
Oh,
live news reporting, and sort of
I
up to date stuff.
yeah, I was hearing somebody who said just last week, said wait until the next U.S. elections are here. Said
Oh,
AI is gonna create a lot of chaos on who said what
yeah.
and all these things.
Well, I think we're all prepared, and we know that this is coming, right?
Yeah.
Particularly with the U.S. election being sort of the dominant in the whole this AI market, as well as a big electoral
Right.
issues going on. So yeah, I think but we're not here to sort of dish the AI program. I think it's a great for what we require for it to embellish, or not to embellish, but to give us something with flavor for things like as artists to do, press releases and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
That is personally driven. It's not factually, things that we can make sure are correct. I think it's a wonderful tool. It's an amazing tool.
And you mentioned a perfect one for artists, the press release, and I've tested it on press releases as well. I used it actually in my latest for my studio closing event as a press release. So I went to Chat GPT and I said I would like to write a press release about my closing studio event, and then I asked the Chat GPT, what do you need to know in order to create this press release? So it came up with about 10 questions. And then I answered the questions as if it was kind of an interview, right? So I answered the questions. So in other words, I asked it, what do you need to know in order for you to create this? So once it knew the answers to those questions, and then it went ahead and it created a press release. So it asked me like what type of event, when, where, to say a quote about it, and who, what was the purpose. So pretty much it asked what a media person would ask me if I were to hire somebody to write a press release for me. Right. So it was really helpful to be able to come up with my press release with the information that I could answer to, and it formatted it as a press release too. It came up already with a formatted letter that I just had to do copy paste it, put my header, and it was done and good.
Yeah, you see that there's your benefit, because these are the things that we struggle with, right? As artists, particularly when we have to, we're always the type of sort of personalities that say, well, I make the artwork, I don't write the press releases.
Yeah.
And and it's been this has been one of our biggest fallbacks,
right? Yeah, disadvantages for many.
Yeah, a huge disadvantage. And now we have access to this. We can do it in minutes, and it'd be accurate because we have control over it,
right?
So
and even sometimes, like, let's say you are working with a client and you need to write a response, but you want to make sure that sometimes, there's difficult people that you want to make sure that the response doesn't sound too strong or something. You can always write it, go to ChatGPT and, make sure that it has the tone that you want, or like tone it down a little bit, or bring it up, right? I want it to be more formal because I need to write an email for, I'm applying to a visa or something. So it needs to have a more formal tone to it. So you can write it, go to ChatGPT and to, in other words, almost like translate it to a more formal voice, because that's what you need. And it can do it for you, and I think that's,
and there's results too with this kind of, I think we both, you and I both know which podcast we're referring to in there. The one I listened to last night for more information they specifically talked about that the internal email, the guy that was normally writing the emails to the clients were putting clients off because it was just his tone of voice, or that person's tone of voice. I don't know whether it was a woman or a man, but their tone of voice in their own written way was turning clients off, right? So the upper guys said, okay, let's give this to Chat GPT to write our email correspondence with those clients, and the whole relationship changed.
Became more friendlier.
Much more friendly. There was no antagonism. There was, it wasn't. It was actually, it softened the result. So I think that too is another positive.
Yeah.
We can all be rather aggressive in some of our responses to friends or to whichever. But I think if we sort of learn from Chat GPT in a way, we can, by writing, remember the old days when email was, or even text messaging is, there were two rules of thumb, don't do it when you're drunk or don't do it when you're tired,
Yeah. And
or
then
wait until the next day.
exactly, right? Or they say,
Yes.
if you don't reply with all caps, that means that you're screaming, and all
That's right.
these
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
rules, yeah.
yeah. So this whole thing has, it's come full circle now.
Yeah.
This is really a surety that we're much more pleasant with one another.
Hmm.
In the business world, I think,
Right. Right.
and clearer too.
Hmm.
There's, as a writer myself, or I'd like to believe I am. If I'm given a task to write a letter to a gallery
Hmm.
as an introduction letter, I
Right.
mean, even I, fairly, I've been doing writing for a while. I can go on and on about
Hmm.
me or about the subject that I'm talking about,
Hmm.
the pitch, as it were, to the
Yeah.
gallery. AI takes it down and sort of takes out all the fluff
Right.
and gives it right to the basic
To the
points.
point. Hmm.
Yeah, it's clear. I don't waste anybody's time. I don't look like a sort of dragging on the story.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So it edits it right down from 5 pages that I might have proposed to 1 page or a half a page that says it
Hmm.
all. So I
Right.
think that is, again, fantastic opportunity
Yeah.
for us.
Right. Yeah, and it's quite interesting. I did also another test where I had it work with. And by the way, I should say that maybe I should have said this at the beginning of the podcast. We are no experts in AI. We're just sharing
No,
our experience and the things that we have been doing. This is
we
an
have
open
3 days in
conversation.
it.
So yes, so don't quote me 5 years from now on something I say
Mhm.
here. But
Yes.
I was gonna say, so I tested it with time. I said I want to see if I can use it as time management tool, right?
Okay,
So
that's
I
good.
went to ChatGPT and said, okay, as I'm an artist, and I want this week to maximize my time in the studio,
Mm.
and I have a number of tasks, and help me out. So what do you need to know? And that's one question that seems to help generate a good answer when you ask it first, what do you need to know in order to
Mm.
tell me? So I said, okay, tell me how many hours a week you want to work in the studio. What are the events that you must attend, or things that are
So it
important?
asked you this? This
Yeah,
is it asking you, right? Okay.
right. It's asking me because
Right.
I'm asking it
Okay.
to tell
Yeah.
me what you need to help me, right?
Right.
So it asked me how many times I'm in the studio. It asked me how much time I want to have off.
Mm.
And so after it asked me the number of questions and I answered, it actually gave me a Monday through Friday schedule
Mm.
that calculated the amount of time
Wow.
I wanted to be working and the amount of time I wanted to be off, and the events that I had already scheduled. And
Wow.
I was blown away. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Of course, I
Okay. The
didn't
real
follow.
question, though, my friend, is have
Did I
you
follow it?
followed through on
No,
it?
no. It was just a test. I'm like, I have a calendar. I can do this myself, right?
So it's
But
not going to come back to haunt you. This is always the fear of technology, right? That
right.
you're going to be like sitting next to your phone having lunch with your wife, and it will say, Sergio,
You're supposed to be painting
you
today.
you're supposed to be painting. I have it scheduled.
I know, right? Yeah. Totally could be like that. But no, and I think there are other uses that I've used it for is also for like kind of like brainstorming, right? For
Yeah.
example, like you can ask ChatGPT to play a specific role. You know,
Mm.
for example, you can ask ChatGPT to play the role of a collector, of an art collector, and you want to write an email that would be, you know, appropriate, you know, or what's the word I use quite often? I will have to look at my prompt sheet. That word, there's a persuasive, you know, a
Oh, right.
persuasive.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, want you to write a persuasive, you know, message to a collector from, you know, with my new collection that I have. You know, I'm sending an email to my new to the collectors, releasing my new collection, and I want to write a persuasive email based on this. So then it will have to play the role of a collector to understand kind of, you know, what I
Right.
want to say to that person.
Did it have that?
Yeah, and
Did
it
it have the
actually did.
knowledge?
It did well. No, I mean, I gave it what I wanted to say, but then
Right.
it just changing the tone,
I see.
you know,
Yeah.
to make my text a little bit more persuasive. You
I
know,
see.
adding
Yeah.
certain words that, you know, were more inviting versus like more dried as I would have written them.
Yeah.
You know,
The
warmer.
question
Bring them
the
in.
question I have following that would be something. For example, I mean, if you're going to be sending out your regular emails, which you've been doing for, you know, a couple of decades, you've been sending, you know, promoting your work,
Mm-hmm.
and you're sending out these emails now with the use of Chat GPT to clean up your email and your message and your, you know, focus on those particular whatever you're trying to, you know, elicit or solicit, I guess. So, have you had any response back from people saying that had like a more positive response? Have your numbers increased by people calling back or not calling back, but reviewing or reading your emails? Is there a very definitive, you know, advantage to it that you've seen, or
That's a good.
like
That's a good question. Unfortunately, I haven't measured like open rates from before to after, which would be a good thing to maybe do after this
yeah?
chat and report back again in our part two of
Because
this.
I think that is
Yeah.
a clear. That's one of our
Right.
objectives. Is, you know, as we send out these emails,
Mm-hmm.
they can become sort of overlooked after a while if you're
Exactly.
sending out on sort of a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I don't do, but I know you do, and I know a number of you know, very successful artists that
Mm-hmm.
are sending out every week or every couple of weeks. But, you know, there is going to be that percentage of people that are saying, I don't have time to read that today.
Right. Exactly.
And the more
And
and
that,
more they get, the more and more that they feel like they're lagging behind, and they end up not reading any of them.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I think this is where AI maybe is going to benefit you, the artist, to
Right.
get them to read it because it's clearer.
And
You
that
know?
and I think you said that word clear, and
Yeah.
that, like, for me, like when I write the email and then I bring it, you know, to fine tune it, I can see the difference in the way it's communicating, where like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted to say, you know,
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
see an improvement on what I said, and it sounds better to me. We just with
Yes.
sometimes with one or two words that are different,
True.
but that I wasn't thinking of those words myself.
Mm.
And I read it like, yeah, this is exactly, you know, and sometimes it's the opposite, where that's not what I want to say. So I definitely
Yeah.
not going to use that or change it. I
Yeah.
noticed, for example, in using it a lot, you know, as I look for the titles for my blog posts or my YouTube videos and things like that. There's one word that it really loves, at least when I use it, is the word uncovered. You know, uncover the
Uncover.
secrets of this, uncover the secrets of that. And at the beginning, like, oh, that's interesting. But now I'm noticing that it uses it a lot. And like, I don't know if it's maybe a choice because
That's
people
interesting.
respond
Yeah.
to it, you know, in SEO terms, because or why,
That's
you
a
know.
very good question. Wow. I like that. I like that idea. People are responding to certain, its findings
Mm-hmm.
are suggesting that the word uncover is going to see better and
It's
more
a trigger.
positive
Yeah, it's a
results.
trigger
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
clicking or reading that email or watching that video.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So
Yeah,
that's something else that we can be, you know, have our eye open for
yeah,
is
yeah.
certain keywords that keep popping up. There's a reason for it rather than just being, playful words or,
Right.
creative words. There's a
Yeah.
reason. The algorithm's saying it's getting more response. More people
Right.
are using this because they're seeing much more success. That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, quite
Yeah.
interesting. And I
Well,
think
it's
you'll
funny.
find that too as you use it more and tested more.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, I'll make mention of this. You wrote a piece today, a blog today
Hmm.
about courage.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm. For the
and
city.
I responded to it. Well, I didn't actually respond to it. I had AI respond to it.
I have to go find that. I have to see what you said. What I want to see what
But
it
it's
said. Uh-huh.
yeah, and I did this as a test for myself as well because I have a very specific way of speaking and writing.
Yeah.
And I write the way I speak.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, how do I say it? I don't even know how to explain it, but my writing is not a perfected writing by any means. And
It's very creative writing.
It's creative writing because I'm using emotion and, I like to call the Obama quiet, like
okay.
those moments of silence.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then he drops something in, but I try to emulate that in my writing. So today I responded to you in Chat GPT to see exactly how I differ.
Okay.
From
and what was your finding?
Being representative. Well, actually, I quite enjoyed it, but it was very clinical. There was nothing colorful about it. Mm-hmm. There was nothing emotional. It stayed at that level. It didn't go deep, didn't go up, didn't go down. It just sort of it's like a laugh track that just never really gets high or low. It just kind of always is, the tone is always the same.
It's like a neutral.
A neutral. It's a neutral
now,
tone.
You could, and this is something that is capable of doing. For example, you can say, respond with a more colorful vocabulary. For example, you can even say, include a joke, and it will include a joke.
You see, this is the kind of thing that, again, I wouldn't know to ask it that.
Yeah. Here's another one. You could, you could say, reply as if I'm speaking to a millennial and include a joke that is relevant to millennials, or reply as if you are speaking to a Gen X and include a joke, or a boomer and include a joke, and you will see it will create a joke that, relates to boomers, and then it will create one that creates to Gen X's, for example.
But are they funny?
At least the ones that I understood for my age group, it was funny.
Well, it's interesting. So then there you go. There is something, because a joke is often seen as, let's see, it's less formulated, less specific. This is how you tell a joke. A joke is, it has so many parameters. It's delivery, it's nuance, it's quiet, it's wordage, what are the correct words together that make a joke funny, and then context.
Exactly.
And this is the other issue that I really want to talk about at some point, and I'm sure a lot of people are talking about this, is ethics.
Yeah.
There's a big issue with, of course, AI really is not an emotional, it doesn't have a heart, it's not got a heart or a functioning physical brain, as it were, right? So we can tend to, from what I've been reading, you can tend to have biases.
Of course, yeah.
Particularly, I think, would be very interesting is the joke world. You know what I mean? Like if you were to go in and sort of ask it to tell a joke, about racial stuff or whichever, I wonder how far it would go. And that's another issue that we have to be, very careful with, right? Because this is a tool that everybody, it's kind of like the computer that we never thought we'd ever use on a full-time basis. Now we carry around in our pocket.
Exactly.
So this is going to stay. It's it's not a sort of NFT world where it
Yeah.
could just collapse. It's not. I don't
Right.
think I don't think it can collapse. It can never collapse.
No, and it's a tool that Facebook's already has its own AI, Google. So
Yeah, of course.
it will be unavoidable to us,
Yes.
as we use our gadgets and as we use our technology, it will be there. It's like the refrigerator. It's just going to be there. But it
One of the
raises a lot of
things,
concerns, for all of us.
yeah. Speaking of that, one of the things I heard last night, which I know you heard as well because you referred the podcast to me and I listened to it. The one thing that left me unnerved at the end of it was when this is a podcast interviewee situation, and the interviewer asked him, so what worries you about AI? And he said, what was it? The word is autonomous.
Autonomous, yeah.
Yeah, the autonomous kind of drones, right? That the system will never stop until it finds the answer.
Right. Right.
And that to me is a bit frightening.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do they call it? Autonomous agents. Right? That agent that's just going to go in there and sort of keep picking away at every piece of data until it uncovers what you've asked it to uncover.
Right.
That kind of information, I think, is
dangerous.
It's very dangerous, dangerous, and then very worrisome. But I'm no expert in this, and
right.
That will be dealt with. I'm sure people are going to have to deal with this. It's like dark web, or it's all of that stuff is there. What kind of control do we have over it?
Yeah.
Who's to know?
I mean, just as you and I are looking for good ways to use it to improve our lives and our careers, there are
Someone's
people who
looking
to use it the other way, to hurt, to damage, to do wrong, and to do all kinds of things.
But I hope that this kind of conversation kind of inspires people to look beyond that, the concerning parts of this,
right,
and use it as a tool that to benefit
for the
creative
good,
lives, for the good,
for the
people,
good of us,
for humanity, right? But that's a wish list, I hope.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a decision I think everybody will have to make. The tool is there; it's not going away. What the level of engagement that every person will choose to have with it will be a personal choice. How much they want to use it or not, and how much they want to, what parts of their life they can see potentially being helpful, and which ones they won't. Which ones you would still rather use pen and pencil, or on paper, and which ones would you rather, have an assistant of some sort with AI, and that's kind of how I see it, myself. I'm starting to make the choices for what things I wanted to help me with, and what things I want to stay, autonomous, as an artist and as a creator, and as an individual, to say, these parts, are just me, and with the flaws that they are, with the mistakes that come with it, but that's me, that's who I am.
And there's certain things that you are always going to do as an artist, as a man of your age, as a father, as a husband, whichever. There's going to be things that you're going to keep doing, whether AI is there or not.
Exactly.
The pen and paper. I spent years using a journal, and I still like the idea of a journal, except I dropped it for probably a good maybe half a decade. I didn't carry a journal around with me, right? And just today I pulled out a brand new journal and started it with a pen, my hand, my thinking, and my ability to write it down. Mainly for memory. I want to be able to remember what I need to do all day.
Yeah.
And I'm not a gadget guy. I don't say on my little, notes section, okay, 8 a.m. I'm going to meet Sergio and blah, blah, blah. I have to see it in writing. You are the same, in similar, a big notepad in front of you.
Right. Sergio Gomez
wonderful.
10.0
Right?
is the one that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I have one as well. You inspired me to do that. But that was for a whole other thing. But that point is that it was almost in kind of revolt against what I just spent 2 or 3 days really reviewing,
Mm-hmm.
which was AI. I kind of went, I'm going back to the pen and pencil.
Yeah.
But I'll use the AI now because
Mhm.
I now have notes as to what I need to do with AI, right? You know,
Right.
I'm not going to
Right.
spend my time on AI, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
And
that notepad has just come back out again, a brand new one. I opened it up today and started something fresh. So
yeah, absolutely. And then you start saving the prompts that are useful for you for the things that
that's
you
right.
do, and yeah, I think it could be quite useful. And I'm sure like this episode will be perhaps also maybe controversial for some artists who look at AI with you know reading headlines, like, oh, this is going to destroy the world, or it could be, who knows. But I
Yeah, who
had a
knows?
I had a comment in one of my posts that I talked about AI a while back, and somebody said, "Oh, Sergio, I cannot believe you're doing AI, and I thought much higher of you, and things of that nature." And I understand, this is still very early. I think it raises a lot of questions and
Well, it would be,
worries from people, but
I'm
you know,
sorry,
it,
but I have to play the devil's advocate again.
Mhm.
Technology, we advance as a human
Yeah,
species, as a planet. All species sort of evolve, right? We're
right.
evolving. If you had said, it would be like the argument in the 50s or 40s to say, what do you mean acrylic? You're going to use acrylic paint? You
Hmm.
can't use acrylic paint. That's not real paint. You have to be an oil painter.
Yeah.
You know, that argument.
Hmm.
And I was part of that. I was in the era of the transition between oil and acrylic.
Mm.
And I didn't want to use acrylic because it felt too plasticky to
Hmm.
me then.
Yeah.
Look at me now. That's all I use.
So you use it,
You
right?
know? So the
Yeah.
argument is there is that, if we don't move with the times,
Right.
we are going to, there's benefits and cons to everything.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
the acrylics, in my case, were a benefit.
Right.
So, but I so deeply rejected them
Hmm.
uh, in my early days, and now I'm exclusively an acrylic guy. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, there are so many things that could be said. It could be explored. Like we would need 5 podcasts, and we need to bring like
Absolutely.
I think we need to bring some experts to help us out also, answer some of
Yeah, of
our own
course. We're just
questions. Yeah,
touching the surface
the
here, and
surface, and yeah.
we're not experts, as you clearly point out, and I'm clearly aware of that. This is just an interest based thing for me
Exactly.
anyway. How I'm going to use it, I'm excited,
Hmm.
but I also do it with some hesitation.
Right.
I don't want to jump into it too fast and be too
Hmm.
engaged in it.
Hmm.
Let it play out like
Hmm.
anything.
Right.
Learn it, use it as to what you need, and
And all
enjoy
technology,
it. Enjoy it.
yeah, all technologies get better. All technologies
Yeah.
change over time. All technologies, have their pros and cons, and yeah.
Do you remember the day when back in the day when we'd say someone had said, "Why don't you just Google it?" And you'd kind of laugh and go, "Google."
Yes,
It sounded like such an odd thing. Like, why? What are you talking about? Google.
exactly.
And now it's in
It's
our,
a verb.
you
Now it's a
know,
verb. Yeah.
it's a verb, and you think, wow, and that is in a very very short period of time. This
Hmm.
has become synonymous with how we do our daily lives.
Right. Yeah.
And yet, when you and I first heard it, we was like, don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think what's different about some of these new technologies from the ones that you and I have experience of when the
Mm,
cell phones came around, and is that these technologies have come so fast and they improve so
mm.
quickly that it's almost impossible to catch up to
Yeah,
what it is that they can do, because the moment you're learning something, there's now Chat GPT 4, and then they're already
of
working on
course.
5 and 6. And
Yeah.
also because many of these technologies are scraping or data, right? And
Yes.
they're mining from what we have put out there. And for in the case of AI with images, which is another topic, but so those are the things that I think for many are reasons for concern
Of
and
course, and they should
copyright
be.
and all those things. Yeah,
Absolutely.
they should be part of the conversation. Yeah, yeah.
I think not a day goes by that any of us on this planet, if we have any kind of level of awareness, that we
Mhm.
don't think about the passwords that we have, and the encryption and all of this and all the data that we
Yeah,
are
or
are showing.
images. Yeah,
Absolutely, we're putting them out every day. Now, to
Mhm.
what degree are you accepting of that? It's up
Mhm.
to a personal level.
Exactly.
There are some people that won't release their, that still shred up, an envelope with their name on it
Yeah.
before they put it in the garbage because they think garbage men are going to put it all together, and maybe they do. Right.
Yeah. Who
But
knows?
there's a lot faster ways now to find you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think we've been at it for an hour already, and it
Yeah.
feels like we had a great conversation on the subject. That we hope that our friends, also had some insight on this topic. Maybe you have been hearing about it. Maybe you're curious. Maybe you are also reluctant to this, and what I would say is just be yourself.
Yeah.
Give it time.
You gotta-
Don't feel the pressure of others, and but also respect what others may be also doing
Sure.
with it in a positive way as well,
Yeah.
and finding good uses for technology to help us all.
True. Well
Mhm.
said. Yeah. Embrace it.
Exactly. Well, and if you, my friends, have some feedback for us, some comments, we invite you to let us know. So you can find Drew. Where can our friends find you on social and your web?
Okay, it's drewharrisart.com, and on Instagram is Drew Harris Art.
Perfect. And you can
Yeah.
find me at Sergio Gomez Art, my website, sergiogomezonline.com. So feel free to send us a note how you like this episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us what's your opinion. Have you tested it out? How you like it? How you not like it? Etc. We would love to hear from you, particularly on this episode, because I think it's so fresh, still fresh in the minds of people.
Well, I'm sure glad I got a chance to talk to you. You are a guy that leads the way, and I thank you. I think many of us thank you for you don't shy away from this stuff, and that's the beauty. We watch what you do, and you give us tips and advice and what to do, what not to do, and so far, it's done a lot of us a lot of good.
So
So
far,
there you go. So far, it's
all right.
working.
Well, all right, my friends.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for joining us today. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Drew. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
And do us a big favor, my friend. If you're listening to the podcast, and you haven't given us a review just yet, today is the day. You can go and give us a review, or ask Chat GPT to give us a review for the podcast. We would love to hear from you. It will also help to get this podcast to more people like yourself as well. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one, and I'll see you at the next level.
Bye.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.